But first, the ABC boss at the National Press Club today. I mean, talk about someone both denying but also confirming the great sin of the ABC. It's bias. Here, first, is the denial.
The ABC takes no editorial stand other than our charter-directed commitments to the rule of law, freedom of speech and religion, parliamentary democracy and non-discrimination. And when we talk about journalistic impartiality, we aren't talking about passivity. Impartiality isn't seeking false balance, where every idea, no matter how weak, is presented as equal. Journalistic task and skill is to select the stories that matter and present the facts and relevant perspectives that equip people to make up their own minds.
As if. Now, I'll be blunt. The ABC, in fact, operates like a gang of thieves. Our national broadcaster takes your money, promising not to misspend it by favouring one side of politics, but then does exactly that. And that really is theft. Money that I or you are forced to hand over by law to the ABC, an ABC that's meant in its charter to be impartial, is then hijacked by the left to preach its politics, to damn taxpayers like me and maybe you as wrong and bad, to damn Sky News as right-wing without realising what that says about the ABC. That being conservative, well, to the ABC, that's actually so appalling. Well, we all know that the ABC is biased. I mean, I've given so many examples of it on my show, almost every week for a decade. Just last week, I showed you the ABC's John Lyons editing out vital information and making Donald Trump seem like a pedophile. Or just yesterday, ABC presenter Sarah Ferguson, I showed her interrupting opposition leader Susan Lee 35 times in one interview. That's once every 22 seconds. Apparently angry that Lee was going against the net zero cult.
And yet that document, Susan Lee, that you have
and it's about the government. That's why costs have gone up 40%. That's why Australians are struggling. That's why
Thank you very much for coming in.
Now, the ABC's bias is actually important, and not just as a matter of principle, the theft. It's also wrong because the ABC has all these TV stations and radio stations and a website influencing public debates, misusing taxpayer money, sometimes to intimidate or even punish and defame conservatives standing in its way. You think how relentlessly, just as one example, it smeared the innocent Cardinal George Pell, a Catholic conservative, smeared him as a pedophile, helping to hound him to jail for crimes I showed here he could not possibly have committed. And the High Court apparently agreed and freed him. Or you think how only yesterday an ABC presenter smeared One Nation leader Pauline Hanson as a racist with a "have you stopped beating your wife" kind of question.
When you got anyone spewing the hate on the streets, and I've seen that not only from neo-Nazis, I've seen it from some clerics on our streets, and I think it's disgusting, yet we don't seem to do anything about them.
Do you apply those same principles to your own speech when it comes to talking about Asians or Muslims or other communities?
Sarah, I think you better rephrase that.
And how many other Conservatives has the ABC attacked and even defamed? It's had to apologise to me, to Chris Kenny, to former Liberal MP Andrew Laming, and on it goes. But back to Hugh Marks today. Now, you heard him there boast the ABC takes no editorial lines. It just leaves the decisions up to you. That's kind of true. I mean, there is rarely an edict going out from the ABC like, you must attack Sky News, you must defend net zero. But the truth is the ABC doesn't need an order to be told the ABC line. They decided anyway. I mean, it's so obvious that you will know the ABC line on global warming. You know it already. You know what it'll say about Donald Trump. You know what it thinks about multiculturalism. You know what it thinks of transgender politics and so on. Even the ABC last night had to cop to that last one, transgender politics, after listing all the examples of the ABC bias there.
As for that third major criticism, that the ABC, like the BBC, is failing to report critically on transgender issues, we fear there may indeed be grounds for concern.
But Marx isn't quite right in saying, oh, the ABC issues no edicts. In some very political issues, it certainly does take an editorial line, like making its shows announce themselves like this.
Good morning. Welcome to AM. It's Wednesday, the 19th of November. I'm Sabra Lane, coming to you from Nipaluna, Hobart.
The new tribalism. Marx himself in his speech today played that same ABC identity politics of the left.
I'd like to start off just by acknowledging the traditional owners on the lands of which we meet and acknowledge their leaders past, present and emerging, obviously any Indigenous people in the room today and watching on television.
Yet despite all this, the ABC still insists on this obvious falsehood. No, it's not biased, and only nasty conservative journalists would say so. Why would only conservatives say that? Even ABC journalists, they must know this is a lie. There was a survey, admittedly tiny, of ABC journalists a decade ago that found that of those who responded, well, they were 5 times more likely than the rest of Australia to vote Green. Or you take the hosts of every one of the ABC's main current affairs show, you will not find a single conservative. And I think it's deliberate. The ABC used to once have conservatives like me, but only really as regular guests, not as hosts, on debate shows like Insiders, even if it was usually one of us against the rest of them. But Ita Batros, as ABC chairman, then made it clear that people like me were no longer welcome.
I certainly hadn't thought that Andrew Bolt would be a great fit for the ABC. There are no job offers out there, Andrew. Sorry, Andrew, but there are no job offers.
But I said today that Marx, having denied the ABC's bias, then seemed to me to confirm it. Because he admitted the ABC should maybe have more chat shows on TV, with guests giving a different perspective, and then saying, well, because you couldn't expect that from the ABC journalists.
Sometimes I think, obviously the ABC, where factual accuracy, impartiality, objective perspectives, these are all the important things. But sometimes maybe we need to, we do it well on audio, but maybe we also need to do it on television. Provide program formats that enable, different relevant perspectives to meet in a more of a town hall format, a town hall style, rather than our journalists having to present, balance in different relevant perspectives.
Except you know how these things go. As I said, when I used to go on Insiders, or when it was invited on Q&A, you'd be there sitting on your own as a conservative, outnumbered by the left, of course, and, with a left-wing audience and a left-wing ABC host. And that kind of boredom wore away a lot of conservatives who no longer turned up. And in fact, also, a lot weren't invited anymore. And so Q&A got as boring as hell. Now, Ita Batros used to complain of exactly that kind of thing too. ABC staff not really wanting conservatives on their show, giving opinions, or not wanting to treat them fairly when they did.
Do you think the ABC is delivering with regards to objectivity and impartiality?
I think there is an unconscious bias, and I think there's no harm in presenting both sides of an argument. And I don't understand the reluctance of some of our interviewers not to, I've said some of the ABC's interviewers not to do that.
Now, that was one of the few times that Ita Batros admitted ABC presenters could be biased before she was whipped into line. So, Hugh Marks, I reckon you should just confess your ABC is biased. But I know, of course, as soon as you do that, then you'd have to fix it by hiring conservatives as well, and then all hell would break out among the staff and the audience. Your life would be hell and you wouldn't want to turn up to work. So that's not going to happen. So we are back then to the tough reality. The ABC cannot be reformed. It steals from conservatives to give to the left, and it will not change. And that leaves only one choice for conservatives. The ABC must be sold, or just make its audience pay for the ABC, as you viewers must do for Sky.